I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, and this morning we're going to go over some material from the great Neville. This is from Neville Goddard, from a radio program that he did in July of 1951, and we're going to update it a little bit as we go along. And it was titled, Affirm the Reality of Our Own Greatness. Affirm the reality of our own greatness. So in the creation of a new life, a new way of life, we must begin right where we are, and this is the truth for everyone. Everything depends on our attitude towards ourselves. That which we will not affirm about within ourselves can never develop in our world. And that's why we affirm that we shall never tell ourselves that we're poor, sick, weak, or unhappy. We realize those are facts, but those are facts that we can put behind us if we start affirming that which is part of God, that which is part of the good. So everything depends on our attitude towards ourselves, that which we will not affirm within ourselves, we can never develop in our world of experience. This is the religion by which we live, for religion begins in the subjective experience. Like charity, it begins at home. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind is the ancient formula, and there is no better and no other. Everything depends upon our attitude towards ourselves. That which we cannot or will not claim as true of ourselves can never evolve in our world. Mankind is constantly looking about the world and asking what's to be done, what will happen, when he should ask himself, who am I? What is my concept of myself? What is my image and likeness of me? What is my image and likeness of me? If we wish to see the world a finer, greater place, we must affirm the reality of a finer, greater being within ourselves. It is the ultimate purpose of every person, every great spiritual teacher, to point the road to this eventual conclusion. Neville says, I am trying to show you how the inner man must readjust himself, what must be the new premise of his life, in order that he may lose his soul on the level he now knows and find it again on the high level he seeks. And what is soul? Soul is another word for consciousness. It is impossible for man to see other than the contents of his own consciousness, for nothing has existence for us save through the consciousness that we have of it. The ideal man, that is the ideal person, is always seeking a new incarnation, but unless we ourselves offer him human parentage, he is incapable of birth. We are the means whereby the redemption of nature from the law of cruelty is to be effected. The great purpose of consciousness is to effect this redemption. If we decline the burden and point to the natural law as giving us conclusive proof that redemption of the world by imaginative love is something that can never come about, we simply nullify the purpose of our lives through want of faith. We reject the means, the only means, whereby this process of redemption must be effected. And that's through faith, through faith. Faith is the strength of the soul, and lost is a person without it. It's an immutable, changeless, eternal truth. The only test of religion worth making is whether it is true-born, he tells us, whether it springs from the deepest conviction of the individual, whether it is the fruit of inner experience, that is, our feeling nature. No religion is worthy of mankind unless it gives each and every one of us a more deep and abiding sense that all is well, quite irrespective of what happens to us personally. The methods of mental and of spiritual knowledge are entirely different, for we know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing and defining it. The great teachers have defined religion as that which a man does with his solitude. And Neville tells us that I believe it is what a man is and what mankind is in his solitude. In other words, what do we think? What are our thoughts? What are we believing? What are we accepting about our world? In our solitude, we are driven to subjective experience. It is then that we should imagine ourselves to be the ideal that we desire to see ourselves as embodied in the world. If in our solitude we experience in our imagination what we would experience in reality had we achieved our goal, we will in time become transformed into the image of the ideal. Be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Put on the new man. Speak every man in truth with his neighbor. In other words, the process of making a fact of being a fact of consciousness is by the renewing of our mind. We are told to change our thinking, but we can't change our thought unless we change our ideas. Our thoughts are the natural outpouring of our ideas, and our innermost ideas are the man himself. The end of longing is always to be, not to do. Always to be, not to do. Be still and know that I am which I desire. Strive always after being something, being more, being happy, being successful, being creative, being kind. External reforms are useless if our heart is not reformed. Heaven is entered not by curbing our passions, but rather by cultivating our virtues. An old idea is not easily forgotten. It is crowded out by new ideas. It disappears when a wholly new and absorbing idea occupies our attention. Old habits of thinking and feeling, like the dead oak leaves, hang on till they are pushed off by the new ones. Creativeness is basically a deeper receptiveness, a keener susceptibility. The future dream must become a present fact in the mind of anyone who would alter their life. Every great outpicturing, that is from within to the without, is preceded by a period of profound absorption. When that absorption is filled with our highest ideal, when we become that ideal, then we see it manifest in our world, and we realize that the present does not recede into the past, but advances into the future. This is essentially how we change our future. A now which is elsewhere has for us no absolute meaning. We only recognize now when it is at the same time here. When we feel ourselves into the desired state, here and now, we have truly changed our future. We have truly changed our future. Let's just know that there's a purpose within each and every one of us, and if we stir up that higher concept of ourselves, that higher idea of ourselves, that higher ideal of ourselves, then we shall find ourselves realizing a grander life, a more wonderful life, a more abundant life, a more joyful life. You know, so many people go throughout the world blaming other people for what their problems are. So many people go into the world exhibiting the hate that's within them. So many people carry hate. You know, right now in Boston there's a trial for this young man who was responsible for killing so many people. They even pled guilty. His lawyers pled him guilty. The trial is all about whether he should face the death penalty or life imprisonment. And this morning as I was watching CNN, they were showing a video where this young man placed a bomb behind children. How monstrous could that be? And it's the monstrosities that go on in the mind of mankind when we allow the world to twist us into the evilness of hatred and the evilness of losing all thought of love and kindness, all thought of a power of God as a power of good. That we take within our human power the means and the circumstances and the evil thoughts that plan and deceive others so that we can do this evil actions into the world. And people tell us that, you know, what world was he living in? What world was this young man living in? He was living in the world of his own mind. And he wasn't affected by all the things outside of him that were good. He wasn't affected by the power of God that had given him a life, an opportunity in this country to do greater things, to add benefit to the world rather than to bring a destruction to the world. You know, the human mind can be so twisted. It's twisted by religion. It's twisted by politics. It's twisted by the hate and the racism that goes on in the world. You know, the fraternity men who were singing the racist chant on the bus. Where did that come from? It didn't come from their own single-mindedness. It came from a pervasive racism and hatred in the world that separates us from each other. But first we separate ourselves from God. We separate ourselves from being the image likeness of God, of the good, of the pure, of the wonderful. And then when we separate ourselves from God, we separate ourselves from that image likeness of God within us, then we start taking in all the evilness of the world, all the things that diminish life, diminish not only the lives of others, but our own lives. Can you imagine what thought this young man in Boston has about his future, or these fraternity brothers who were expelled from the college and the fraternity shut down? Can you imagine what their future is going to be all about? This pervasiveness of being separated from each other and hating each other is something that no person of any common sense or any level of intelligence or any awareness of the fact that we are created in the image and the likeness of God could ever conceive of. This is an evil far beyond anything that most of us could ever even imagine our life being. But we know that in this world in which we live, by loosing ourselves from that divine image and likeness that we're created in, by loosing ourselves from a relationship with God, so many people have allowed themselves to take in all this evilness of the world and think somehow, some way, there's a justification in their mind that they could do such a thing. This hate must end if we're ever going to have a world where we start giving direction to our mind to take in more of the love and more of the joy and more of the good that God has prepared for all of us. But we can't take in the greater good or do the greater things still that Jesus tells us we can all do when our mind is stayed on the good, on the evil, stayed on the hate, stayed on the racism and the anti-Semitism and the homophobia and the Islamophobia, all this stuff. We separate ourselves first from God, which loves everyone as if there's only one of us. We separate ourselves from the good by separating ourselves from God. And when we entertain any thought of hate, any thought of prejudice or racism or any of those phobias or anti-Semitism or any of those things, we foster and nurture that thing in the world that Jesus said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." In other words, get thee behind me, that evil thought of mankind that feels separated from God and feels separated from each other, not realizing that within each and every one of us is the Spirit of God and the higher realm of truth. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all of the one Spirit, the one life, the one mind, the one intelligence, and the one power of God. So let's go back to these words from the wonderful Neville. This is taken from his radio talk in 1951 from Los Angeles. Discouraged people are sorely in need of the inspiration of great principles, he tells us. We must get back to first principles if we are to speak with a voice that will kindle the imagination and rouse the spirit. Again, I must repeat, in the creation of a new way of life, we must begin at the very beginning with our own individual regeneration. Man's chief delusion is his conviction that he can do anything. Everyone thinks he can do. Everyone wants to do, and all ask what to do, what to do. It is impossible to do anything. One must be. We must be. We must be successful. We must be the plumber. We must be the minister. We must be the professor. We must be the farmer. We must be the accountant. We must be it if we're going to do it. It is hard for us to accept the fact that we of ourselves do nothing. That's what Jesus said. I of mine own self can do nothing. It is especially difficult because it is the truth, and the truth is always difficult for mankind to accept. But actually, nobody can do anything. Everything happens. All that befalls mankind, all that is done by us, all that comes from us, all this happens, and it happens in exactly the same way that the rain falls as a result of the change in the temperature in the higher regions of the atmosphere. This is a challenge to all of us. What concept are we holding of ourselves in the higher regions of our soul? In the higher regions of our soul. Everything depends upon man's attitude towards himself. Everything depends upon our attitude towards ourselves. That which we will not affirm as true within us can never develop in our world. A change of concept of ourself is the right adjustment, the new relationship between the surface, mind, and the depth of man's soul, mankind's soul. Deepening is, in principle, always possible, for the ultimate depth lies in everyone, and it is only a question of becoming conscious of it. Life demands of us the willingness to die and to be born again. This is not meant that we die in the flesh. We die in the spirit to the old man to become the new man. Then we see the new man in the flesh. Subjection to the will of God is an old phrase for it, and there is, I believe, no new one that is better. In that self-committal to the ideal we desire to express, all conflict is dispersed, and we are transformed into the image of the ideal in whom we rest, which is God. We are told that the man without a wedding garment reaches the kingdom by cleverly pretending. He does not believe internally what he practices externally. He appears good, kind, and charitable. He uses the right words, but inwardly he believes nothing. Coming into the strong light of those far more conscious than himself, he ceases to deceive. A wedding garment signifies a desire for union. He has no desire to unite with what he teaches, even if what he teaches is the truth. Therefore, he has no wedding garment. When we are united with the truth, then we will put off the old nature, the old garments, and be renewed in the spirit of our mind. Truth will strip the clever pretenders of their false aristocracy. Truth, in its turn, will be conquered and governed by the aristocracy of goodness, the only unconquerable thing in the world. The only unconquerable thing in the world. In other words, the goodness of God, the good of God, is immutable. It's indestructible. But so many people who think that they can live this life and just give lip service to what God is, to live this life and give lip service to what this life is, deceive themselves. It's self-deceit. We don't deceive the world, really, because out of a man's mouth comes all the things that he believes to be true. Out of the mouth of the young man in Boston came all the things he believed to be true. Out of the mouth of those fraternity brothers on that bus chanting that racist chant came what they believed to be true. And it poisoned their mind and poisoned their life. They didn't just damage someone else's feelings about life. They damaged their own life. Life is a gift. God has gifted us with this thing called life. And we must go back to that understanding that the only test of religion worth making is whether it is true-born, whether it springs from the deepest conviction of the individual, whether it is the fruit of an inner experience. No religion is worthy of mankind unless it gives us a deep and abiding sense that all is well, quite irrespective of what happens to us personally. The methods of mental and spiritual knowledge are entirely different, for we know a thing mentally by looking at it from the outside, by comparing it with other things, by analyzing and defining it. But religion is that which a man does with his solitude, and whatever a man is in his solitude is what the world will see him as being soon enough. So whatever is going on in our mind, whatever patterns of thought that we carry in our mind, whether they be of the nature of good or the nature of evil, then we shall soon experience them. When Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you, the kingdom of God is within you, he could just as easily have said the kingdom of hell is within you too. Because it all begins with your attitude towards life, with your attitude towards yourself, with your attitude towards the world in which you live, and your attitude towards your Creator, our Creator, I should say. Do we believe that God has given us this life? Or do we believe that somehow we just popped up on planet Earth at random? We must take it into our mind and ask ourselves, what do we believe about our life? What do we believe about the creation of who we are? And what do we believe about being in that image and likeness of God, that image and likeness of intelligence and power and spirit, that intelligence and power and spirit that created everything in the world in which we see, and beyond anything that we can conceive and see and understand in a visible, factual way. So many things in life are beyond the scope of our understanding. It's beyond my understanding how that young man in Boston could have planted a bomb behind innocent children. How he could have gone casually to Whole Foods Market and bought milk within 30 minutes after doing this, and worked out at the gym the next day with his friends after doing such a monstrous thing. He even ran over and killed his own brother. The police didn't kill his brother, he did. And what about those young men on that bus chanting that racist chant? What is going through their mind today? Are they blaming the world? Are they blaming other people? Or are they taking responsibility and asking and praying to God to fill their mind with love and fill their mind with understanding and fill their mind with the truth that Jesus said, the truth for all of us? That when you see me, you see the Father. When you see anyone, you see the Father. The Father is spirit. We're all infinitely individualized spirit, created in human form. The intelligence that created life clothed our spirit in human form, and we're here to recognize and realize that God is seeking to be known through us, that we're to glorify God in all that we do, and as we see anyone, we must know that God is life, God is all life. And no matter what race, creed, color, national origin, no matter what language they speak, no matter what their sexual orientation is, their gender is, their anything is, they're always the image likeness of God. They're always part of that infinite spirit, having a human experience through each and every one of us. That's why Jesus said, I of mine own self can do nothing. The Father that gave me life lives in me to the level and the measure that I believe it is true. And when I find within myself that kingdom of God within me, I will know that I have chosen the good, chosen God over all the things of the world that seek to diminish, seek to block, seek to obstruct, seek to twist my mind into believing that there's God and something else. Besides me, there is nothing. We read in the book of Isaiah, I am the Lord, besides me. There is no thing. There is nothingness. Nothingness. The evil is the nothingness that passes away. The good that is God becomes the reality of our own greatness within us as we affirm it, recognize it, draw it into our mind every day, and let ourselves be filled with the love and the spirit and the joy and the intelligence and the power of the nature of God. And so it is. Amen. Once again, I want to thank you.